The city hummed softly under a blanket of lights, its streets wet with the shimmer of recent rain. Cars passed like streams of gold and red, the air filled with distant chatter, a rhythm that only those who truly listened could hear. Among the crowd, a young woman named Clara walked quickly, her scarf fluttering behind her as she tried to make it to the subway before midnight. Her mother used to call her a dreamer, someone who felt too deeply for a world that often didn't care enough. But lately, Clara hadn't felt like a dreamer. She worked long hours at an office that never saw daylight, lived in a small apartment that echoed with silence, and carried a quiet ache that never left. Her mother had been gone for 2 years. A pianist, a lover of melodies that could heal hearts. Their home once overflowed with music until illness silenced it. Since then, Clara had stopped listening altogether. That night, the city seemed colder than usual. She tightened her coat, passing a coffee shop where soft jazz spilled through the open door. She almost kept walking, but something stopped her. Across the street, near the old theater, a man sat on a stool with a guitar resting on his knee. He wore a simple black coat and a gray beanie. His eyes were covered by dark glasses, and beside him lay a white cane folded neatly on the ground. The blind musician played with a stillness that drew people in. Each note floated through the night like a whisper, raw, imperfect, but full of soul. People tossed coins into the open guitar case as they passed, but he didn't seem to notice. He was lost in the music, smiling faintly as if hearing something no one else could. Clara stood there, frozen. Something about the melody, it wasn't random. It sounded familiar. Her chest tightened. She couldn't place it, but it tugged at her memory like a thread being pulled from a forgotten sweater. When the traffic light changed, she crossed toward him, the song still echoing in her mind. Just as she reached the curb, the man stopped playing. He leaned slightly forward, sensing her footsteps. "Excuse me," he said quietly, his voice calm and warm. "Could you tell me, is the light red or green?" She blinked, realizing he was about to cross the street. "It's red right now," she said softly. He nodded. "Thank you." A moment later, the light changed, and she instinctively reached out to guide him. Her hand hovered near his arm, uncertain, but he smiled as if he could sense her hesitation. "It's all right," he said. "You can take my elbow if you'd like." She did, carefully. Together, they stepped off the curb. The sound of traffic, the rush of wind, and the tap of his cane against the wet ground filled the quiet between them. When they reached the other side, she started to pull away, but he turned slightly toward her. "Thank you," he said again, his smile faint but sincere. "Most people just walk past." "It's no problem," she murmured. He tilted his head. "You stopped to listen, didn't you?" Clara hesitated. "Yes. Your song, it sounded familiar." He chuckled softly. "It's something I wrote a long time ago." Before, he lifted the edge of his glasses slightly, revealing the cloudy blue of his eyes. "Before the world went dark." Something about the way he said it made her heart ache. She wanted to ask more, but the words tangled on her tongue. "Well," he said, adjusting his guitar strap, "I should get going." "Thank you again." Before she could stop herself, she said, "Wait." He paused. "Would you like a coffee?" she asked. "There's a cafe right there." He smiled faintly. "Only if you're joining me." They sat by the window, the rain tapping gently against the glass. The cafe was quiet, just the hum of an espresso machine and the low chatter of strangers. He introduced himself as Eli. He used to play in small bars and underground music halls before an accident took his sight. "How long ago?" Clara asked gently. 5 years, he said. "Car crash. I was supposed to play a concert that night. Funny how things change." "I'm sorry," she whispered. He shook his head. "Don't be. Music's different when you can't see. You start feeling it instead of hearing it." Clara looked at the guitar case beside him, worn and scratched, but carefully maintained. "And you still play outside every night?" He nodded. "It reminds me the world's still there, even if I can't see it." There was something about him, not pity, but peace. The kind that only comes after losing everything and learning to live again. When she told him her name, he smiled. "Clara. That means clear or bright, doesn't it?" "Seems fitting." She laughed softly. Maybe once. He tilted his head. Not anymore? She looked down at her untouched coffee. Not since my mom passed. She was a musician too. She played piano every morning before work, every night before bed. She used to say music was how she spoke to God. Eli was silent for a moment, then said quietly, maybe that's why you stopped listening. Her throat tightened. Yeah, I guess I did. Outside, the rain grew heavier, washing the reflections off the glass. They sat there in the warm glow of the cafe, two strangers bound by the quiet weight of loss. When they finally stood to leave, he said, you know, I play at the corner near the park every Friday night. You should come by. Maybe I'll play something you recognize next time. She smiled faintly. Maybe I will. That night, as she walked home, she realized the tune from earlier still lingered in her mind, haunting yet familiar, like a voice she'd once loved. And for the first time in years, she didn't cover her ears when she passed a street musician. She stopped. She listened. Because somewhere in those notes, she thought she heard her mother again. The week passed like a slow song on repeat. Days blurred together, the hum of the city outside her window blending with the low buzz of her thoughts. Yet through it all, one sound lingered, the melody Eli had played that night. It would slip into her mind when she made coffee, hum through her when she waited for the train. She tried to shake it off, but it clung to her like the scent of rain after a storm. By Friday evening, Clara found herself standing at her window, watching the city lights shimmer through the mist. Her hands itched for something she didn't know what. Maybe closure, maybe peace. Or maybe she just wanted to hear that sound again. Without thinking too much, she grabbed her coat and stepped out into the night. The park was quiet at this hour. A thin fog floated above the grass, and the air smelled of wet leaves and rain. Street lamps flickered softly, their light broken by branches swaying in the breeze. And then she heard it, faint but clear. A guitar, somewhere near the fountain. She followed the sound until she saw him. Eli sat beneath the old oak tree, the same gray beanie pulled low over his head, fingers moving gracefully over the strings. A small crowd had gathered, tourists, lovers, lonely wanderers. But Clara stayed back, her heart thudding softly against her ribs. The song was gentle, almost like a lullaby. She closed her eyes and let it wash over her. Something inside her stirred, a memory of her mother sitting at the piano, her hands gliding effortlessly across the keys. The same rhythm. The same rise and fall. It couldn't be. Eli ended the song with a soft flourish, his head bowed. The crowd clapped quietly, and coins clinked into his open case. When they began to leave, Clara stayed. She waited until the space cleared, until it was just the two of them and the sound of the fountain nearby. She stepped closer. He turned slightly, his unseeing eyes seeming to sense her presence. You came, he said softly. I told you I might, she replied, smiling faintly. I was hoping you would. He reached down, closing his guitar case carefully. She noticed how gently his hands moved, as if everything he touched might break. I recognized your song, she said. At least I think I did. Really? His voice lifted a little, curious. Which one? The one you played the other night before the cafe. He tilted his head thoughtfully. That one's old. I wrote it for someone once. A woman who used to come hear me play before I lost my sight. Her breath caught. Did she help you write it? He nodded. She didn't know it, but yes. I used to play near a conservatory downtown, and she'd come every morning before class. She always carried sheet music. She'd stop for a minute, listen, and smile, that kind of smile that could fix a day, you know? One morning, she told me I had a gift, but that I was afraid to use it. I laughed, said I was fine playing for strangers. She said, then play for someone who matters. He smiled faintly, as if seeing her face again in his mind. I wrote the song that night. The next day, she didn't come. I never saw her again. Clara's throat tightened. What was her name? He thought for a moment. Margaret. She said she was a pianist. Why? The world seemed to slow. Her breath trembled. For a second, she couldn't speak. That was my mother's name. Eli's hands froze on the guitar case. Your mother. She taught at the conservatory, Clara whispered. and she always went to listen to musicians near the entrance before her classes started. I used to go with her sometimes before school. She'd stop by a guitarist who played near the fountain. She'd hum your songs at home. The silence that followed was heavy, fragile, sacred. Eli's fingers trembled slightly. Then, that song I played, it was hers too. Clara nodded, her voice breaking. She used to play it at home. On the piano. I thought she wrote it. I had no idea. He turned his face toward her, and for the first time, she saw tears glistening beneath the streetlight. I didn't know she was gone. She passed 2 years ago. Eli exhaled slowly, the breath shaky and deep. I used to wonder what happened to her. After I lost my sight, I stopped going there. I didn't want her to see me like that. But she remembered the song. She did, Clara said, her own tears now falling freely. Every time she played it, she said it was written by a man who played from the soul. The night around them felt still, like the city itself was listening. He lifted his guitar again, slowly, as though guided by invisible hands. Would you like to hear it one last time? She nodded, her lips trembling. He began to play. This time, the melody was softer, fuller, touched by something beyond sorrow. The notes floated through the cold air like the echo of a memory, weaving light through the darkness. Clara closed her eyes and felt every word her mother never said, every goodbye she never got to give. When the final note faded, she couldn't hold back anymore. She stepped forward, knelt beside him, and whispered through her tears, "Thank you." He reached out carefully, his hand finding hers. "Don't thank me. She gave me that song. Maybe she meant for it to find you again." She pressed his hand gently. It did. They sat there together, under the city's quiet glow, a blind musician and a grieving daughter, bound by a song that had lived through both their hearts. For a long time, neither spoke. The rain began to fall again, soft and forgiving, soaking through their coats, but neither of them moved. It was strange how something as small as stopping to help a stranger cross the street could lead her here, to this moment. When she finally rose, she asked, "Do you still play anywhere else?" "Sometimes at a little bar on 7th, he said. "But not many people listen anymore." She smiled through the tears. "I will." He smiled faintly. "Then I'll play something new next time." As she walked away, she looked back once. He was still sitting under the tree, his face lifted slightly toward the rain, a faint smile on his lips. For the first time since her mother's passing, Clara didn't feel alone. The city didn't sound so empty anymore. Every horn, every distant song, every drop of rain, it all carried music again. A week later, the city was glowing again, this time with early winter lights strung across the streets. The air was colder, crisp with the scent of roasted chestnuts and rain-soaked concrete. People hurried home, wrapped in scarves, chasing warmth through the neon blur. But Clara wasn't in a hurry. She carried something else in her hands tonight, an old music sheet, slightly yellowed at the edges, creased from being played too often. Her mother's handwriting still danced across the top corner. For Eli, the man who played from the heart. She smiled faintly as she walked toward the little bar on 7th Avenue. Through the fogged glass, she could see him, Eli, seated near the corner stage, tuning his guitar. The lights around him were dim, warm, soft like candlelight. There weren't many people there, just a few regulars sipping coffee, a couple whispering in the corner, and the quiet hum of rain outside. When she stepped in, he lifted his head, almost as if sensing her before the door even closed. "You came back," he said softly. "I told you I would," she replied. He smiled, the kind of small, quiet smile that carried gratitude deeper than words. "I was hoping you'd say that again." She walked over and handed him the folded music sheet. He ran his fingers over it, tracing the faint bumps of the paper. "Is this?" "My mother's," she said. "The last song she wrote. She never finished it." "I thought, maybe you could." He tilted his head, curious. "Why me?" "Because you're the only one who still plays like she did, like every note matters." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he unfolded the sheet carefully and placed it on the table beside him. His fingers hovered over the guitar strings, searching for the right key. Then, slowly, A sound emerged, hesitant at first, like the song was finding its way back into the world after being silent for too long. Clara sat down beside him, her hands clasped together, her heart thudding softly in her chest. The melody grew stronger, warmer, as Eli's confidence settled in. He played by touch, by memory, by instinct. And though he couldn't see her, his music followed her breathing, gentle when she leaned forward, deeper when she exhaled. She watched his face as he played, the faint smile curving his lips, the way his eyebrows drew together in focus, the way his fingers moved as though the strings were alive. And for the first time, she understood what her mother meant when she said music could speak where words failed. When the song ended, the bar was silent. Even the hum of conversation had stopped. Then, softly, people began to clap. Eli lowered his head, his expression humble, almost shy. Clara wiped a tear from her cheek, smiling through it. He turned toward her. "What should we call it?" She thought for a moment, then said, "Maybe, For the Ones We Still Hear." He nodded slowly, repeating the title under his breath, almost like a prayer. For the rest of the night, they stayed there, talking about her mother, about the old streets of the city, about how sound could bring people together even when sight couldn't. Somewhere between laughter and silence, something gentle began to take root between them, not quite love yet, but something real, fragile, and growing. As the last customers left, the bar owner dimmed the lights. Eli stood, his cane in one hand, the guitar case in the other. Clara slipped her arm around his, and together they walked out into the soft drizzle. The streets shimmered with reflections of passing cars and neon signs. They stopped at the crosswalk, the same place where they'd first met. "Do you ever miss seeing?" she asked quietly. He thought for a moment before answering. "Sometimes. But I've learned something. The world still shows itself, just differently. In voices, in footsteps, in music. Even in silence." She smiled, watching the light change from red to green. "Then maybe I can help you see again through my eyes." He turned his face toward her voice, his lips curving softly. "And maybe I can help you hear through my heart." The rain began to fall harder then, but neither of them moved. They just stood there, the city lights dancing around them, his hand finding hers in the quiet glow. He didn't need sight to know how close she was. He could feel her in the warmth of her breath, in the rhythm of her heartbeat, in the way her fingers lingered against his. And she didn't need words to understand what he was saying. In that moment, it wasn't about what they'd lost, her mother, his sight, but what they'd found. Two lives that had crossed through the smallest act of kindness, only to discover something far deeper. When the light turned red again, they stayed where they were, laughing softly under the rain like two people who'd finally learned how to stop running from the pain that once defined them. And when he reached up to touch her cheek, his thumb tracing a single raindrop down to her chin, she leaned in, not out of pity, but connection. The kiss was soft, unhurried, and real. The city around them blurred into light and sound, horns, rain, music, all of it melting into one simple truth. Sometimes, the people we help are the ones sent to heal us. Later that night, when Clara walked him home, they didn't speak much. They didn't need to. The music had already said everything.